Okay, so officially starting the Biosafety Committee meeting. Today is May 28th, 2024. We will, here, let me pull up the agenda so I can see it. And we can kind of proceed as usual if Justin is able to join us, but we can choose to mix around the agenda a bit, and maybe there's no one from the public on, so there's no need for a public comment period. And maybe we can take the meeting minutes and we'll either push it till the end if Justin happens to be on, or we can choose to push that to another meeting.
Yes, that's a good idea. But just see how it goes. And if Justin doesn't come, we'll just wait till the next meeting.
Great. Okay, so the other items are really just discussion and updates generally. Because we don't have regular meetings, Sai and I really wanted to make sure that we could update on the renewal cycle and the inspections. So first up is the biosafety permit renewal cycle. So this is our first instance of biosafety permit renewals. They're due on May 30th. I'm not really sure why we did the 30th. I think maybe someone didn't realize the 31st. Now you had 31 days. But we've had a few sort of like logistical errors in the system with the renewals, which I think is just a consequence of the first time these things are being done. Quite a few like folks who had submitted the initial permit are not the ones to submit the renewal. Like they may have had a contractor or someone who was helping them with the initial. And so we've had to do some like contact changing, or in some instances, the permit has to be sort of submitted as a new permit number as a renewal. So we've had some sort of complications there, but we've got, I think, 2 submitted, and then the other 3 are in the works, and we're communicating with those people back and forth to get everything done. So we may have some that end up submitted past the 30th due date, which is, it's okay. It's just a sort of a task on our side to get these figured out for the next cycle. But we were able to discuss with the lab contacts during our inspections if any of them had any notable changes they anticipated, because we agreed at our last Biosafety Committee meeting that they could be approved administratively unless there were some like major changes or notable changes. So we were able to sort of ask everyone at the inspections if they anticipated any changes in the upcoming year, or if they had done any changes. And we reminded everyone that when they do make changes, they should be alerting us right away. But at the very least, we should definitely be seeing a summary of that in these annual reports that we're asking for. And no one had any notable changes. No major changes, no additional agents, anything like that. The only real notable change was in Candel that had actually a pretty notable reduction in their workforce. So they had, and we told that, they can leave those items in their application in case they go back to these projects, but they had a pretty substantial like workforce and work plan reduction to focus on a couple of projects. And that was really it. So we anticipate that all of them could be administratively approved, unless, of course, some of these lingering ones come in and it turns out that they've got something notable on there. So that was good because we were able to remind everyone about the renewal cycle and what we need from that while we were on the inspections. Any questions or concerns or comments on the renewals?
No, I think that's fine. Any committee I've ever been on has a system for automatically approving things if they're minor changes. So, yeah,
I think that's especially, and this cycle perhaps is unique too, because we just approved a lot of these. It hasn't been a year on any of these permits, but we just had to pick a date for these permits to be due. So in some instances, it's only been actually like 4 months or 5 months since we approved it last.
Well, you got to get them on a cycle, and then everything should run smoothly after that.
Yeah. And, you know, it was really great for us to go on the inspections and get to talk to the lab contacts about that, because I think they were very confused about why that had to be. So that was really helpful, because I think it calmed everyone's sort of concerns about why we were asking for something else so quickly. But yeah, I'm hoping this next cycle, everyone will just kind of, we'll get into a flow of things. Great.
For the administrative approvals, I think we talked about some sort of like, I don't know if you wanted to disseminate a summary or something, just so we could like read through them, even if it's like, hey, in 7 days we will be we will approve this, you know, unless you have any objection. I think that it'd be nice just to be able to read through things just in case.
Great. So I can definitely do that. I can put together all of the items that people have submitted. And again, some of it will be repeat, but some of it is new, you know, an annual summary of things like that, or changes, Biosafety Committee minutes, things like that. So I can put those together and send those out and have everybody, you know, again, you can take your time. We have this, we wanted everyone to have submitted by May 30th. I'm not sure that will happen, but again, all of that is just an internal thing, so it doesn't necessarily impact, you know, the companies know that their permits are all set and we're working with them. The lapse is okay.
Yeah,
But we
no,
will
that's
work on perfecting this system next year, hopefully.
I think John has a good point.
Yeah,
Yes.
whatever's the least obtrusive way for us
Yep.
to be able to thumb through these. You know, I'm sure some of them will be no changes, and then it's less important, but some sort of
Great.
guidance.
So I can send those, you know, I can send the ones that are have been submitted, so that maybe those can be reviewed, and then I'll send the other ones as we get them. And you know, I don't know, we can give it like a week or something like that to review them and just say, hey, this, I don't, you know, if I don't respond, I'm fine with it, and if I respond, I'll have some notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
So you still get the flexibility and freedom to like approve these yourselves, but then we get the option of, I don't know, bringing it up for review or something to like a meeting
Yeah,
if we felt necessary.
absolutely. Okay, I think that's a great idea. Just gonna note that. Okay, perfect. All right. The inspection cycle. So I included the inspections. I think were really successful. And again, Cy ended up sort of last minute getting into a training, so he's not able to be here, because we're glad he got into this training. But I think that they were really successful. Number one, in that we were able to meet these lab contacts in person. I think it's really helpful to actually build the relationships with folks that we've been emailing with. It's really just been a trial and error thing for both parties. And so I think it was really nice for us to get together and chat about the permits and chat about, you know, what is the process going forward. I think they were able to see that we were really sort of there to be regulators, but also helpful at the same time. So I enjoyed it. I think Cy did as well. I included 2 checklists. Okay, Justin had something at work come up, so just heard back from him. I included 2 inspections checklists here. The first inspection checklist is like the Cambridge, I think maybe perhaps Boston uses this one as well, checklist. It's very detailed, you know, it goes through a yes, no, not applicable. And then sort of a second checklist that is a little bit more conversation based. And I think sort of we used a combination of both of these checklists. And our reasoning was that, so Cy is the inspection expert. He has been on, you know, food and housing and et cetera inspections. And he had noted that the first checklist, being sort of lengthy and detailed, is tricky to actually navigate in an inspection situation, unless we can anticipate being in the labs for many hours. And so that he had suggested that we bring both checklists, that we remember the items that we're scanning for when we're at the labs, but we also have a checklist that sort of just guides conversation with the lab contacts, in which case, like between the conversation and our walkthroughs in the lab, we would catch sort of everything. So we kind of sat down with the second checklist that has our Needham Public Health Division logo on it, and guided a conversation with these lab contacts and asked them about sort of broad things that we were concerned about, like who has space, access to the lab space, and who is responsible for policing lab safety behaviors. Do you perform internal inspections to police yourselves? Because again, we are acting as a regulatory body here, but we know that just how it is in the day-to-day, it's better that they're policing themselves, because we won't be there very frequently. We were able to review sort of how their IBCs meetings or other safety meetings are going, reminding them that we'll be asking for those minutes at the annual review, asking about how their biosafety manuals or their lab safety manuals are updated and by whom. How are people receiving training? How frequent is the training given? How is emergency action plan information distributed? How do employees know how to report an accident or a spill? Do they know how to handle an accident or a spill? Do they know the chain of events that happens after something like that occurs? So they were really, really productive conversations. We do have some like detailed scribbles from the inspections that I didn't include, but we can include. We can combine our notes and sort of include them for you if you'd like to review. The summary of everything first is, I would say, the labs are they're very well prepared and very well equipped. I was impressed because each lab we visited had one or two designated lab safety individuals. So in the case of a couple of the labs, they were contractors who came in and they were responsible for these types of things. They paid them weekly or monthly visits to the lab to go over these things. In some instances, it was an assigned member of the lab who was either doing another role, plus they were the safety person, or they were the safety person. So I think that was immensely helpful, and why a lot of the labs looked so good was because one person is really in charge of employing and enforcing all of these things. All of the labs had some sort of internal inspection or checks on themselves. Some were more formal than others. Some were developing that process. We discovered sort of in this capacity that it may be of interest to us in the future to ask for, or maybe ask for when we're feeling interested in it, minutes from these types of lab safety meetings. Right now, we ask for IBC meetings where they're talking about, a very specific set of topics, biosafety changes. But it may be interesting for us to, at some point, ask for lab safety minutes, which is just general practices of, we did an internal inspection and we found that our, our ethanol bottles are not labeled and our hoods are not, someone's not closing the sash on the hood or whatever it may be. So that I think was really great. The other sort of note to this was that because 3 of these labs were so new, I think really the next set of inspections we do will be a little bit more informative because they had only started the work for 2 or 3 months maybe. And in those 2 to 3 months, they hadn't really started the work. They were getting the VSCs and the hoods and all of their consumables in. And so they had really barely started work. So I think we were getting a representation of the lab. I don't know that we were getting the most accurate representation of what the lab will be like. In terms of the, going through the checklists, I would say like one note that we gave to folks sort of consistently was to have paper copies available of things like your emergency action plan and spill procedures, accident procedures in the lab. You know, a lot of them use internet systems where you can access these things. But we had sort of suggested that things be available on paper in the lab for people to review, just in case people, you know, there is an internet outage or a power outage or something like that. And I think that was really our biggest consistent note. Otherwise, I would say the labs, like truly, they looked great. They were very clean. Everyone knew we were coming. So of course that's, you know, there's always that to keep in mind. I remember that from the lab days, you know, your lab never looks better than your inspection days. But I do think that in general, the labs, it was really well handled, and the lab contacts were very ready to answer all of our questions. They had detailed training plans. They had plans for internal audits or inspections. Everything was very well labeled. The labs were tidy. There was no excess clutter. So I was very impressed. And again, I think that our next cycle will probably be a little bit more like truly informative to the inspections once the labs have maybe been going for a year or so. Any general thoughts or questions or concerns?
Yeah, I think that the detailed checklist is probably best used informally, in the sense that review it before you go into the inspection. Just, yeah, I got to check on that, got to check on that, got to check on that. But then use that more conversational methodology when you're actually doing the inspection. It puts everybody at ease. It builds a feeling of trust, I think, between all the different participants, and you get a feel for what they're like too. So I like that approach.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I agree. I think it worked really. We were a little, you know, we had to just try something, and I think it ended up working really well because, like you said, we weren't staring down at a piece of paper the whole time. We were trying really hard to engage, and you could tell from someone's response whether they felt prepared or unprepared for that question, or like they had an answer or they needed to think of an answer. But we were able to sort of keep in mind all of the things from that other list as we were going through and scanning the labs.
And it gives you a chance to make real eye contact too.
Which was important.
Yeah, 100% agree. I actually just hosted a CDC inspection of our facility in Cambridge.
Oh,
And they use like an incredibly, I think that detailed checklist is like, there's 100 different versions of it, but they're all incredibly similar. They're all just adopted by different agencies and stuff. And they went through line by line and did every checklist, and it was just like mind numbing to host them because their face was buried in their clipboard, and they were just like, okay, biosafety, SASH, certification date. Where are your biosafety cabinets, right? And then so I walked behind them for like 2.5 hours as they did line by line and did everything on the checklist. And like, I don't know, some things there's a lot of really good things on the checklist. There's some really ticky-tack things on the checklist. And so it's just like, it's not really, some of those things aren't really in the spirit of like what you're going for. So, you know, fully agree of using the detailed one almost as like a, reminder reference guide for the inspector. I think that's what Sam Lipson often does. I mean, he's been doing this for like 40 years or something now. So
yes.
I don't remember him carrying anything.
Yeah.
I think he just walks in, but he's done it so many times. He just knows what to look for. But in a similar vein, like maybe you forget like, oh, right, spill kits. That's on the detailed list. I need to make sure I ask that or something like that. I think that's a perfect balance.
Checklists are
Right.
good, but they have their place, and they can be dehumanizing, as you just said.
Mm-hmm. It was a brutal like 3 hours. So yeah,
That's it. It's
Few of
long.
those.
Yeah.
When you're looking for every individual item on a checklist, and you know, when we had gone through this checklist, we had said, you know, some of them are going to be easy to spot, and some of them you just totally have to derail whatever's going on to be like, you know, where is this, and show me where the sticker is on it so that I can see the date. And it didn't allow for a smooth, we were able to really smoothly sit down. In most instances, we sat down and had a conversation prior to going in the lab. So some of the things were already checked off. They already told us they've got this training program in place and this. And then going through the lab, it was just wherever we happen to be, you know, what are the sharps bins looking like and what are the biohazard bins looking like? And are the hoods, you know, are the biosafety cabinets certified? You can quickly glance over and see that. Or they've already discussed, hey, we had someone in here last week who certified all our biosafety cabinets. Great. So it made it much more smooth. And I think overall, we walked away feeling very positive about the relationships that we had built with the
Yeah.
contacts we had there, which
I think
made
that's-
us feel really good.
I think that's important too.
Yep, agreed.
Great. So we will kind of keep that process going then. And I think again, as you go through it, as Sam Lipson was the person who I think first, Cy was able to shadow Sam on an inspection, and Sam had said something similar. I have this checklist. I don't really use this checklist. I know what I'm generally looking for. And also, you know, when you walk into a lab, you can already sort of tell right away, oh, I'm going to have to really look, or wow, this lab is it's really tidy. Everything looks labeled, the cabinets, you know, things look in place.
Yeah,
and I think it was
exactly.
really helpful to have Sam's input and Cy's input as someone who does all of these other inspections, where he had similarly said, it is really tricky to go through with a giant checklist, nose into it, and also try to build a relationship with the person that you're talking with.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been through, you know, both systems, and I hate the checklists. So
Great. Okay, so we can keep that up. I'm happy to work with Cy and send the notes that we have from our sort of conversational checklist if it's of interest. If it's not of interest, that's totally fine. But if it is of interest, I'm happy to work on combining them.
I'd like to see the notes and see what your perceptions are.
Okay, great. So I will I'll coordinate with Cy or to see if I don't know what his note-taking process was like. I'm happy to send my scribbles over, but
You don't have to make them, you know, don't worry about making them a formal document. Just, you know, Rosie can kind of look at it and
great.
One last
suss
thing,
it out.
one last thought about the checklist as I'm marinating on it.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice to have the checklist exist somewhere. I think for all the reasons that we talked about, it's good. I think it would, you know, keeping the checklist though is good, especially if there's like a discontinuity of like you and Cy or something, like whoever the inspector is, because, you know, I'm thinking about basically you two and the experience that you're gaining and have now. And then if you guys were to like come in or out or something, you would want the inspector to be able to do similar things, and not have to have like a learning curve there. So I think that is another utility of having the long checklist, is like, hey, these are the things we're looking for on the back end.
Yeah.
So this is the form we're going to fill out or something. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yes.
I agree with that.
And I think it was helpful, even just in the differences. So, you know, in the inspections, I think it was great. Cy and I went together. Cy has more inspectional experience, but I've had experience in a lab, and I think we were able to balance each other out really well. And I think it was nice because sometimes when Cy was asking a clarifying question that maybe I didn't need, but I was glad Cy asked it, because I think anytime you walk into a lab, someone should be able to explain to any sort of layperson what is going on, or why do they do this or don't do this. And I was able to sort of flip to that checklist in the back to see what it was that I had or had not been looking at while I was walking through the lab. And we were sometimes able to tackle things separately, where one of us sort of was talking and one of us was walking. So I think it was good to have both checklists there for whoever was doing the talking and whoever was doing the walking, to remind ourselves. And I think even just the conversation was really great with all of them, but you can get distracted. Some of them, the science was really interesting. What they were telling us about was new. We've never met any of these people before. And it's easy to get distracted. And so it's good to have a reference checklist always. Great. So I will work with Cy and we can get those notes over.
The only other thing I was thinking of looking at the new Needham list is if you thought it would be useful to have a section for like follow-up. Like it's also easy to tell inspectors that you're going to do something or that you're working on something, but I wonder if there's something that you really thought that they should be implementing, if it's not like a failable offense or something, but like, you know, they really need to have a document in place or something like that. I wonder if it's worth on the sheet being like, you know, we'll follow up in 60 days. And like, we'll ask for proof that you addressed something like too much clutter in an area or something they can take a picture.
Right. I think that's a great idea.
Just some sort of inspectional follow-up to give you an option to like kind of just via email, just ask.
Perfect. I think that's a great idea. And I think, you know, we did emphasize to them that in theory, we have put in our regulation that we didn't indicate a time for inspections. I think we left it vague purposely to say, we can come, we will ask you to come at times. And so we did tell everyone, you know, we may not anticipate doing another inspection until next year, but we may choose to come again and we would let you know ahead of time. But I think that's helpful, especially when we do have something that we want follow up on. And if we're not hearing back, or maybe we're not sure about the answer, it'll be good to remind ourselves to follow up there.
Cool.
Okay. Perfect.
Is it the plan to inspect every year?
That's a great question. And I think Cy and I had that question as we were going through. And we discussed the renewals and we discussed the inspection, and we sort of looked at each other and said, I don't know that we've adopted a routine for this. I think a lot of the inspections that Cy does happen either every 6 months or every year. I think we can decide on whatever that may be. I think we told everyone we knew we would be in at least yearly and that we could come in more than that, but we could make a decision on that as a committee, whether we would like it more frequent than that. I think Cy and I did discuss that. Right now, you know, we've only got the 5 labs in town, which is great. I think if it becomes too many more than that, we may end up having to make a decision on, I don't know, consulting it out just based on the time and the scheduling and the workload.
Yeah, I was almost thinking less than annually.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Definitely not more. So yeah, I guess you make a good point. Bandwidth wise, if we can do annual, it's probably not a bad idea. But at some point, you know, you could imagine a situation where if there's no changes and you're administratively approving the renewal, you could probably just opt out of that annual renewal and then try to do like no less than every 2 years or something. But like if there's no material changes, like, and they had a successful inspection the first time, save yourself some trouble. But
yeah, I think that's great.
Definitely not pushing for more frequent, unless they have, you know, they add some agents or something, and you're saying, hey, let's just go out and do an inspection again and make sure they have all the safety infrastructure in place. But
yeah, I think that was sort of what we were trying to alert them to, is like if somehow there is a complaint or something they've submitted seems really off, or they've added something really notable, that we would go out. But I think that's great. I think you know, personally, I would be glad to not do them more than annually. They were great, but it's a lot of work and preparation ahead of time.
Yeah. Is the Muzzy Ford dealership going to be biotech still?
Yeah, that's a good
Just curious
question.
about like long-term scale as we like build up the process.
Yeah.
Are there going to be 20 companies that move in there, or like?
I think that the anticipation is still yes. And actually it was a few months back that I read an article that the landlords, I think, were still feeling confident amongst the biotech scene that they would have tenants, life science tenants come in. But as far as we know, and we've sort of been keeping an eye on it, that there haven't been any companies filling that space. And I know that the market in the biotech pharma world right now is tough.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but that would be the site to keep an eye on, because I think as that, if the situation changes and that starts to fill up, I think that's when we would have to start to think seriously about whether we needed to contract this work out.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah,
Or-
my understanding is that the developers are just sort of sitting back and waiting, because between the uncertainties of the office market and the small downturn in the biotech lab space needs, that was their two primary areas. And so they're kind of, let's just see what happens. And then we'll start, really planning and building. So it probably 4 or 5 years down the line,
Cool.
be my
got
guess.
We got time.
Yeah, we've got time. Yeah, which is sort of a relief, especially as we've gotten all of this sort of up and off the ground. It's been really nice to only have a few companies to contact with, and that 3 of those companies were brand new themselves. So it's been, a lot of trial and error on both sides, which was good. But we have time. We'll sort it all out. All right. So I think that's really all that we had, other than the review of the meeting minutes, which we can again postpone to another meeting.
I think we need to wait.
Yeah, so I sent them out in March originally, and then I've sent them with this meeting packet. So now maybe you've got them sort of fresh in your mind. I don't think anything particularly exciting. The minutes are pretty short. But we can vote on them at the next meeting. I think we don't have regularly scheduled meetings. We have not heard anything about another company opening. So our next meeting may just be another one of these types of check-ins, where we can talk about the renewals sort of after the fact, and any of the inspection notes or anything like that. Is there anything else that you think we should be talking about or checking in on in the meantime?
I don't have anything, but maybe John does.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and if something comes up and you've thought of something that we should discuss, certainly feel free to shoot me an email and we can just plan to schedule a meeting. Otherwise, I'll grab all of the renewal materials as they're coming in and the notes from the inspections, and then we can just maybe plan to have another check-in meeting sometime in the next, I know it gets tricky as we get into the summer, maybe a month or so, or a couple of months, and just review everything, see how it's going, and just have an excuse to meet and make sure we're addressing everything.
Yeah, I think, the next 2 or 3 months, another meeting, and then, because you seem to have a good handle on the day-to-day activities.
Great.
Yep, sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
So that was nice. And I appreciate all of the feedback. I think that I know it's tough with us not meeting regularly. Cy and I sometimes just have to make decisions on how we're going to handle things. And we really appreciate all of the thoughts and the feedback. I think we're going to really be able to solidify this cycle as the months go on, hopefully the next cycle goes on. All right, so I think knowing that, the only thing we need to do is have a motion to close the meeting.
I'll move to close the meeting.
I can second that.
Great, with the 3 of us. All right, so we'll do both via roll call. Ed?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Julie? Yes. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Right. See you all.
Bye.